Hello, my friend. Welcome to your channel. I want to read you a story that will amaze you. Stay with me. This story is The Butterfly Effect. On a pleasant autumn afternoon, young Mathieu walks through the streets of the La Croix-Rousse district in Lyon, France. With both hands in his pockets and his long, steady strides, he keeps his eyes fixed on the cobblestones of the sidewalk. Immersed in his thoughts, he is oblivious to his surroundings and the passage of time, consumed by thoughts of how much he loves Clara and how, in these 3 months of their relationship, he has fallen deeply in love with her. He doesn't want the outcome of his previous 2 failed relationships to repeat with Clara. He wants to provide the best conditions for their shared life and must tell Clara everything during this meeting. Mathieu arrives at Rue de l'Abbé Rosière. Beautiful, young Clara is sitting at a 2-person table outside the La Boîte Café. Mathieu embraces Clara, and they spend delightful moments drinking coffee and eating cake. They recount their recent daily events. Clara, whose father has passed away, talks about her mother's illness and how much her mother's happiness is increased by the visits from her sister's children. Mathieu asks Clara how much she loves him. Clara responds, "We haven't been together for long, and I'm not yet in love. You're a good and attractive man, and I like you." Mathieu expresses his feelings and says that he wants to marry Clara. He says, "I want to create the best conditions for a good life with you," and asks for her opinion on this matter. Clara replies, "It's good to reach a point where I'm sure that marrying someone will make me happy and content. You are a good man, and I haven't felt anything negative from you so far. We'll see what the future holds." Mathieu says, "As you know, I'm an automotive electrical engineer, but I work in my mother's bookstore. I've spoken with them, and there is no position for me in the car manufacturing factories in our country for the next 5 years. I don't want to wait for those 5 years." He continues, "My cousin is a production manager at Mercedes in Stuttgart, Germany. I've had an interview with them and submitted my documents. They have contacted me to sign a contract. I'm heading to Stuttgart tomorrow to sign a 3-year contract. We will be happy there." Clara is initially silent for a moment and then says, "Yes, that's a great opportunity for you." After a few minutes, they part ways so Mathieu can prepare for his trip the next day. Feeling triumphant, Mathieu, elated from his meeting with Clara, walks with renewed enthusiasm, oblivious to his surroundings. Throughout his journey, he imagines a bright future for himself and Clara, with smiles constantly gracing his lips.
Me in my dreams, I am the happiest with you. I am full of enthusiasm to be at the top with you.
Lyon is bustling that day as Olympique Lyonnais football team is playing in the French Cup final against Olympique Marseille. People carrying their football team's flags are heading to the Lumière Stadium. However, Lyon is a city where people prefer exhibitions and art galleries more than football. In the meantime, Mathieu, distracted, encounters a fan of Olympique Lyonnais holding a flag who is riding a bicycle towards him. When Mathieu realizes that he is late and the cyclist is veering onto the sidewalk to avoid a collision, he is not hit, but the cyclist crashes into a streetlight and falls to the ground. Mathieu, stunned, stands motionless and watches. People gather around and help the cyclist up. Mathieu approaches them, the cyclist limping and repeatedly saying he is fine and needs to get to the stadium, eventually gets back on his bicycle with difficulty and leaves. Shaken, Mathieu takes a deep breath and leaves. He walks more attentively, lost in thoughts of Clara, and returns home a few hours later. Mathieu's mother, sitting in front of the TV, says, "Mathieu, there's no dinner tonight. I'm watching football. You can help yourself to the food in the fridge." Mathieu replies, "Okay, Mom, I'm not hungry at all. I have more important things to do. I need to prepare for tomorrow's trip." Mathieu goes into his room and starts gathering his documents and belongings to pack his small suitcase. Still infatuated and full of excitement, he feels the need to calm down with a cold shower. Then he heads to the kitchen to eat from the fridge. After leaving the kitchen, he notices his mother's happiness. The Olympique Lyonnais football team has won the French Cup final. Mathieu congratulates his mother and goes to his room to sleep. The next day, Mathieu goes to the Lyon airport and takes a direct flight to Stuttgart. At the Mercedes factory, accompanied by his cousin, he meets with the company's managers and signs a 3-year contract after negotiations. Later that day, he arranges a small celebration with his cousin's family at a restaurant. Mathieu, full of hope, messages Clara, "I have signed a 3-year contract. This is the beginning of achieving our dreams." After a while, Clara responds, "Congratulations and good luck."
Me and my dreams, I am the happiest with you. I am full of enthusiasm to be at the top with you. I wanna live all the opportunities, must be a winner too.
2 days later, Mathieu returns to Lyon. He tries to contact Clara, but his calls go unanswered. A few hours later, he calls again, but it's still unanswered. He then sends Clara a message. "Clara, I've returned to Lyon. Please arrange a meeting as soon as possible." Night falls, and Mathieu receives no response from Clara. The next day, Mathieu goes to Clara's workplace. Clara, who is a cashier at a traditional restaurant, greets Mathieu with coldness. Mathieu asks, "Has something happened, Clara? You didn't respond to my calls and messages." Clara says, "No, nothing happened. I've been a bit busy. I'll call you." Mathieu leaves the restaurant and heads to the bookstore. He keeps his eyes on his mobile phone throughout, but receives no call from Clara. Mathieu endures that day and night. The next day, his patience runs out, and he calls Clara again. Clara doesn't answer. Mathieu messages Clara, "Clara, what's happening? Why haven't you contacted me?" A while later, he receives a message from Clara. "Hello, Mathieu. I'm very happy about your success and employment at Mercedes. I know you'll create a beautiful world for yourself. But I cannot accept your marriage proposal because I have a sick mother who has no one but me. My sister's married, has children, and cannot take care of my mother. I didn't tell you this at our meeting in the cafe because I didn't want to negatively affect your decision to work at Mercedes. I knew you weren't happy working in your mother's bookstore. I don't want to prevent your happiness. Our relationship wasn't deep enough. Good luck." Mathieu, unable to control himself, rushes to the restaurant where Clara works. He tells Clara, "In this short time I have fallen in love with you. My only goal in life was to win you. You should have told me sooner. Mercedes is not a company I can easily back out of a contract with. I have signed numerous non-cancelable commitments. Without you, I will suffer greatly." Clara, seeing no other option, tries to convey through silence and coldness that the relationship is over, as they cannot continue due to Mathieu's feelings and his job situation. Mathieu tries to maintain contact with Clara in the following days, but Clara continues to push him away, worsening Mathieu's condition.
I don't want to be a loser. I don't want to be separated
from you.
A few days later, when Mathieu, disheartened, returns from Clara's workplace after consuming alcohol and crying, he goes to the banks of the Rhone River. He sits in a corner, crying. As it gets dark, he notices someone approaching him. The person, an old man, comes up and says, "What's happened, young man? Tell me. Maybe I can help." Mathieu explains his situation to the old man. The old man advises, "It's better to accept reality and strive for your future." Mathieu replies, "This reality is not acceptable to me. I have no motivation to strive." The old man says, "In my opinion, you are mistaken. What do you think is best for you?" Mathieu answers, "I wish I knew, and I wouldn't have gone to Stuttgart and signed that contract. I wish I could go back in time." The old man asks, "Are you sure you would have done the right thing?" Mathieu responds, "Yes, I would have stayed at the bookstore and tried harder to win Clara." The old man moves closer and says, "Are you sure you wouldn't have regretted it?" Mathieu says, "Now, what difference does it make?" The old man replies, "It makes a difference." Mathieu says, "Yes, I wouldn't have regretted it. I should have stayed at the bookstore to win Clara, but I really didn't know what was right." The old man comes closer. Mathieu, surprised, just looks at him. The old man places his hand on Mathieu's head and comforts him. Mathieu feels a bit of calm and falls asleep. When Mathieu wakes up, he finds himself in his bed in his room. The sky is bright. He comes out of the room. His mother, who's ready to go to the bookstore, says, "Son, there's football tonight too. Since I'll be late coming back from the bookstore, it's better if you don't stay without dinner. Have dinner outside. I want to watch the football." Mathieu mutters, "More football? I'm sick of football." He then asks his mother, "How did I get home?" His mother, looking at him with surprise, says, "As far as I saw, with your 2 legs." Then his mother leaves the house. Mathieu goes to his mobile phone. All the messages he sent to Clara asking to reconcile have been deleted. With the messages gone, he starts to doubt his mother's behavior and that old man from the previous night. He thinks to himself, "They think I will forget." He spends a few hours impatiently at home. Then he goes outside. The city is once again buzzing with football excitement. Next to a newspaper stand, people are talking about the final match. Mathieu asks the newspaper vendor, "How many times a year is the final held?" The vendor replies, "Only once." Mathieu says, "Wasn't the final held last week?" The vendor says, "No, last week was the consolation match. The final is tonight." Mathieu looks at the dates on the newspapers. They all relate to the previous week. He is confused. Then he looks at his mobile phone's date. It also shows a date from a week ago. A message arrives on his mobile. Mathieu's heart starts racing. The message is from Clara. It says, "Hello, Mathieu. You said you wanted to discuss something important about us today. When and where can I meet you?" Yes, it is correct. Today is a week ago. Today is the day Mathieu was supposed to meet Clara to tell her about going to Stuttgart. Mathieu is beside himself. He frantically asks people what day it is, and every time he is sure he has gone back a week, he behaves even more crazily. He slaps his face a few times and realizes he is not dreaming. He quickly messages Clara. "Dear Clara, I will meet you at 5 p.m. at La Boîte à Café on Rue de l'Abbé Rosier."
I wanna live all the opportunities. Must be a winner too.
Mathieu rushes back home. He goes to the bathroom, shaves, and puts on his best clothes. This time, he goes to meet Clara with a beautiful bouquet. Yes, Clara, the beautiful one, is sitting at that table. Mathieu approaches her, hugs her, and they start their sweet moments. They drink coffee, eat cake, and laugh. Mathieu asks Clara how much she loves him. Clara tells him, "We haven't been together for long, and I am not yet in love. You are a good and charming guy, and I like you." Mathieu expresses his feelings and says he wants to marry Clara. He says, "I want to create good living conditions with you," and asks Clara to give her opinion on this. Clara says, "It's great that I reach a point where I am sure that marrying a person will make me happy and content. You are a good person, and I've not had any bad feelings about you until now. We will see what happens in the future." Mathieu says, "As you know, I work at my mother's bookstore. Although I'm an electrical engineer, I could be hired by car factories within 5 years. I've talked to them," and he adds that he is willing to wait for those 5 years and will do anything to succeed alongside her. Clara smiles and then says, "It is very good that you have plans for your future. I hope the best happens." After a few minutes, they part ways. Mathieu, returning home, is no longer in a hurry to prepare for the trip. Feeling triumphant, Mathieu, elated from meeting Clara, walks with enthusiasm, paying attention to his surroundings. Along the way, he imagines a bright future for himself and Clara, with constant smiles on his face. People with their football team flags are heading to the Lumière Stadium. Among the fans, Mathieu stands alert, waiting for the fan with the Olympique Lyonnais flag riding a bicycle to pass by. Mathieu smiles at him and then continues on his way. He orders a double pizza from the best Italian restaurant in Lyon, buys 2 cans of beer, and goes home. Mathieu's mother, sitting in front of the TV, says to him, "Mathieu, there's no dinner. I'm watching football. You can help yourself with the food from the fridge." Mathieu says, "Mom, I'm very hungry. I bought the best pizza for us and 2 cans of beer to celebrate the championship." His mother says, "Wow, what a delightful prediction." Mathieu goes into his room. The first thing he does is cancel his flight ticket with his mobile phone at the last minute. He is still intoxicated by love and excitement. After a while, he feels he must calm himself with a cold shower. Then he comes out of his room to eat pizza and drink beer with his mother and celebrate. But he notices his mother is worried. The game has gone to penalties, and the Olympique Lyonnais team is 1 goal behind. The Olympique Marseille player lines up to take the last shot. He takes the shot, and the ball goes in. The Olympique Lyonnais team loses the game. They are not champions. What a strange occurrence. Mathieu is confused. Is he dreaming? Mathieu's mother, uninterested, eats a slice of pizza and goes to her room. Mathieu, with some anxiety, goes to bed. The next day, Mathieu, upon waking up, looks at his mobile phone. Yes, it is the day he was supposed to fly. He checks the internet. His city's football team lost last night. Mathieu, full of hope, messages Clara, "If possible, can I see you after you finish your work?" Clara messages back, "I will definitely let you know." A day or 2 passes in this way, and Mathieu meets Clara. On the evening of the day he previously returned from Stuttgart, he notices news in the newspapers that was not published last time. News about a merchant being injured in Lyon by robbers. He wonders what change occurred that led to this event. A few days later, Clara informs Mathieu about her mother's worsening condition. But she is happy that her mother's old friend has returned to Lyon due to her husband's job. Clara is happy that her mother's friend visits their home regularly, which is very good for her mother. Mathieu spends his mornings and evenings at the bookstore and tries to meet Clara after the bookstore closes. But this rarely happens because Clara, along with her mother's friend, takes her mother to a rehabilitation center every day. However, it does not have much effect on Clara's mother's health, but meeting with her acquaintances makes her mother happier. Therefore, Clara has less time to meet Mathieu. A month or two passes in this way. Usually, Martin, Clara's mother's friend's son, takes them to the rehabilitation center and then out of the house. Mathieu, missing Clara, sometimes meets her very briefly while transferring her mother to the rehabilitation center. Martin always helps Clara and her mother. Gradually, Mathieu feels that a closeness is forming between Clara and Martin. Mathieu becomes sensitive about Martin. Clara is upset about this and says that they are helping us sincerely and kindly. But as time goes on, Mathieu sees Clara and Martin becoming more and more intimate and feels Clara is becoming colder and colder towards him. This leads to arguments between Mathieu and Clara. The fear of losing Clara again overwhelms Mathieu. One day, when Mathieu goes to Clara's restaurant to see her, he notices that Clara has gotten into Martin's car and left with him. Mathieu calls Clara. Clara does not answer. Mathieu and Clara text, "Where are you?" Clara replies, "I will call you." Mathieu reaches the rehabilitation center, but no one is there. Mathieu stays up all night in his room, thinking about Clara and Martin. The next day, Mathieu goes to Clara's workplace and argues with her. Clara tells Mathieu, "You have no right to dictate to me. Martin and his mother are showing affection to my mother. I'm very grateful to Martin. You should watch what you say." A few days later, Clara's mother passes away, and the young and beautiful Clara mourns. Mathieu, with a bouquet of flowers, attends Clara's mother's gravesite on the day of the funeral. Mathieu's attention is focused on Martin. He detests Martin. A few days later, when Mathieu goes to Clara's workplace, he sees Clara leaving in Martin's car.
I don't want to be a loser. I don't want to be separated from you.
When Mathieu, disheartened, returns from Clara's local restaurant, tears in his eyes, he goes to the banks of the Rhone River. It is getting dark. He sits in the same place where he had met the old man. After several hours of waiting, he notices the old man's presence. Mathieu stands up and says to him, "What have you done to me?" The old man replies, "What did I do to you? You did it yourself." Mathieu says, "All of this is your doing. Why did you cause the Olympique Lyonnais team to lose? Why did you cause that merchant to be injured? Why did you put Martin between us? Was Clara's mother's death also your doing?" The old man says, "Except for Clara's mother's death, all of that was because of you. I told you that it would be better to accept reality and work for your future. Olympique Lyonnais lost because that cyclist you collided with was a streaker who, on his first attempt, was injured and couldn't jump onto the field. But on the second attempt, when you were careful not to collide with him, he remained unharmed and jumped onto the field on game night. Everything was disrupted. It distracted everyone, and your city's team lost the game." Mathieu asks, "Why did the robbers attack that merchant?" The old man says, "On the same night you bought pizza, an additional order came in for the chef. He got home half an hour later, and his child, who was waiting for him, had fallen asleep. His wife argued with him. Their argument escalated. The next day, the chef's wife went for a consultation with a psychiatrist. Her car caused a small traffic jam at an intersection without traffic lights. That traffic jam made the merchant arrive at his workplace 2 minutes later. Those 2 minutes were enough for him to encounter the robbers who had passed by 2 minutes earlier and hadn't seen him. Yes, this is the impact of all of us in the world. Matthew, overwhelmed with amazement and fear, asks, "Where did Martin come from?" The old man says, "After the defeat of Olympique Lyonnais in the Cup final, the club management fired all the technical staff. In the new technical staff, there was a fitness coach whose wife was from Lyon. He, along with his wife and son Martin, returned to Lyon to serve Olympique Lyonnais. This was an opportunity for his wife to spend time with an old friend who was ill. Martin was the son of the fitness coach of the team you caused to lose by going back in time and affecting the world. Otherwise, Martin would never have come to Lyon, met Clara, and had the chance to serve and care for Clara and her mother." Matthew says, "So what? What difference does it make if I lost Clara in my previous life too?" The old man says, "The only reason Clara didn't stay with you was her mother. Death was Clara's mother's fate. Without the presence of her mother's friend and Martin, and the effort for her health, Clara's mother would have died 2 months after your departure to Stuttgart, and Clara would never have forgotten the one who had lovingly cared for her. You had the opportunity to win her in the future." Matthew begins to cry, and feeling intense regret, says, "Then send me back to my previous life." The old man says, "I cannot do that, but if you want, I can put you in a new situation." Matthew hastily says, "Then take me to a time before Martin entered our lives so that I have the chance to serve Clara's mother." The old man steps closer and says to Matthew, "Are you sure you won't regret it?" Matthew asks, "What guarantee is there that something worse won't happen?" The old man says, "You who have experienced being bound by the past know the answer to this question better." Matthew, feeling unwell, says, "Please, tell me what to do." The old man says, "I repeat again, it's better to accept the past and work for your future. With what happened to the merchant and the change in the football result and Martin being between you and Clara, you should understand that your impact on the world is much greater than you think, and you saw that being bound by the past makes everything worse. So go and make an impact in your world so that the future belongs to you." Matthew says, "This time it's harder." Then the old man steps closer, brings his hand near Matthew's head, and says to him, "Are you sure you won't regret it?" Matthew, terrified, stands up and runs away with all his might, distancing himself from the old man and the Rhone River. Yes, friends, living in the past makes us depressed and only harms our present and future. We all need to live in the present to build the future.
Je veux vivre toutes les opportunités. Il faut